switch gears a little bit. Now we're going to go to the Attorney General's race. We have with us tonight State Representative Jason Knight.
Hi and good evening. Thank you everyone for having me, and again also, Lieutenant Governor's here. Thank you. Greetings to all the electeds here in the room. I just want to give a shout out to Treasurer Diosa and Secretary of State Amore. We are so blessed to have their leadership in this office, because in these two offices, clearly they have a lot to do, and I get the warm fuzzy every time I see them speak, because I know that they're doing it and doing it well. And that civics program is particularly strong, and just I've been a part of that at the State House, and it's just a tremendous program, so thank you. My name is Jason Knight, and I'm running to be your next Attorney General, and I'm here to obviously tell you a little bit about me, ask for your vote, and answer any questions that you have today. Certainly just a little bit about me. So, public service is in my blood. My grandfather was a veteran of World War II and the Battle of the Bulge. He arrived in Normandy on D-Day +3, and then after that he got himself sent to Korea, where he was a combat veteran there. My father was active duty Navy. When he met my mom, he was in Newport, and mom was from Warren, and they got together and they had me, and I grew up in Idaho. And where he was from, he was a police officer there. I followed in their footsteps, and I joined the Navy right out of high school. I enlisted in the Navy. I served active duty for just about 8 years. I was in the submarine force, and I was a nuclear power operator. When I got out of the Navy, I went to college and worked for a few years, ultimately went to law school. And the first thing I wanted to do out of law school was use this new desire to work in the law and to really understand it. I'm a big law geek, but I wanted to use it in service of the public, just like I had done in the Navy. So the first real job I got was at the AG's office as a prosecutor, prosecuting crime here in the state. So I obtained justice for victims, and I worked very hard and handled those cases for just over 4 years or so. I went out on my own and became a private criminal defense attorney, performing that important constitutional role of being a defense attorney in our court system. So between those two experiences, I've got just a shade over 20 years of every day in the Rhode Island court systems, working in the justice system, doing the business of the AG's office. In 2016, I got elected to be the state representative from Barrington and Warren. I represent half of Barrington and just about half of Warren. And during my time up at the State House, I have passed laws protecting public safety. I was part of the coalition to really push and codify Roe versus Wade into our state law. It's one of my proudest votes up there. I've been a huge gun safety advocate, and I passed a ban against straw purchases here in Rhode Island on firearms. And I'm most proud of our act last summer to ban assault weapon sales here in Rhode Island. That was my bill in the House, and I was a big cheerleader for it, and I'm just very glad that we got to cross the state line across the line last summer, so that in 2026 you will not be able to buy an AR-15 or an equivalent style weapon here in the state of Rhode Island. And all of that is resume. Big question, I think, for you guys is, if I'm in your shoes, I want to know, why am I running? Why is this guy running, and why should I vote for him? I'm running because, despite all the troubles that we're having, which Secretary Maury just talked about a lot, is I believe in the American experiment. I feel blessed to be born in America, and I've always wanted to give back, and I always wanted to preserve what we have for future generations. My kids are young adults right now, and I like to think that their future is bright because they live here. And because of that, I want to serve my community so that I can, pay it forward, so to speak. That's why I run, that's why I do what I do, that's what informs my public service. The reason why I think I'm the right candidate right now for Attorney General is because, while there's lots of candidates in this race, there's 4 candidates running for the Democratic seat, and every single one of them comes with a resume, so to speak. 3 out of the 4 candidates have, some experience in the AG's office. I'm the only candidate who's running on this record. A record as an elected official. The record being that I'm on the right side of the issues. My record of bringing my constituents' voices to the State House, of making promises and keeping those promises. And my record of delivering results. My record of passing laws protecting public safety, of passing laws protecting reproductive rights, of passing laws protecting the public through gun safety measures. This is tough times, right? There's scary stuff going on out there. We've talked about it some tonight. We have ICE on the streets creating chaos. We have a president who is just absolutely out of control, talking about taking the voter rolls and affecting elections. We have him starting wars without even consulting Congress or even a buyer leave to the public. And there's strange things happening right now. The Attorney General's office in the state of Rhode Island is the first and the last line of defense from all those crazy policies coming down from Washington. It is not an entry-level job. And it takes somebody who has been there to run that shop, run it effectively in service of Rhode Islanders. If I'm in your shoes and I'm asking myself, what kind of candidate do I want to see in here? I want a candidate who I don't have to ask, will they do what they promised to do? Because I already know that that candidate has done it in the office in which he was elected to. And that is what I bring to this race. We are living in challenging times, but I'm confident that we can get past it over the next few years. If I'm elected your AG, I promise you I'll do this. Just stand up for Rhode Islanders. Be that first and last line of defense. Make sure the office runs the way it's supposed to in pursuing all its duties, both internal to Rhode Island and repelling all the craziness coming from outside. And be a good partner in government. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Well, last time some people came in to speak to us, this issue kept coming up about people aging and wanting to age in home, and maybe be cared for long term in home. And what I've noticed from some experience with people very close to me, family and otherwise, is that sometimes people coming into your home to take care of people are also stealing. They're stealing identities, they're stealing money, they're stealing jewelry. And we don't necessarily seem to have a very good process for helping those people out. And in this swirl of chaos that surrounds us right now, I think issues like that are also very important. In one case, I know there was an identity theft, and it's taken a very long time to prosecute, even to see any interest in it despite evidence. In another case, there was a lot of property theft, and because there wasn't necessarily direct evidence, the police weren't even very interested in it. And I think that's a massive problem that is only going to continue to get worse as people try to bring more people into their homes. And I'm wondering if you see anything that the Attorney General's office could be doing, up to and including maybe even having a registry, like a sex offender registry, that says this person was certified to work with people and instead stole from them. And now here's a website where you can really quickly check that information, because it's very hard for people in their homes that don't have the backing of a corporation to do that kind of work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that predatory practices towards our elders is, unfortunately, it's here and it's on the rise. We see it through all the scams that are out there, which the police are working very hard, hand in hand with federal partners, to hold the line on, but it's just a drop in the bucket sometimes. The General Assembly has taken some steps to be on top of this. We passed laws around, those Bitcoin ATM machines that you see where people, try to dump their life savings into as part of the scams. But I hear what you're saying about this, and I'll just take a moment to say, I've personally introduced and passed a bill or two on this topic. Most recently, families are now allowed to place an electronic monitor in the homes of their loved ones in a nursing home to monitor via video what's going on. That's a direct result of the bill that I put in the House and Senator Boyer put in the Senate and passed and signed by the governor, and it has already caught bad actors preying on our elders. So to get to your question, what can the AG do? When you hire an AG, you're not hiring a lawyer to do lawyer's work. You're hiring a lawyer to make the political decisions about where to put the resources of the office in order to serve Rhode Islanders best. And on this front, I think that the AG can do a couple things. Number one, it can get serious about elder affairs and staff up that unit, that criminal unit, to perform reach out to the police departments, to impress upon them how important it is to take these complaints seriously and to get after it. I think that there is a conversation to be had around people who are maybe approved caregivers in the home, have passed maybe an enhanced background check, hand in hand with the Department of Health. Doing a reverse registry is an interesting idea. I don't know if it would be as effective as doing sort of the flip side of that, of having people who have a special license that are approved.
Thank you.
So I've asked this question of the other candidates who are running for Attorney General as well. So one of the issues that I think that touches the Attorney General's office that is most important to me is domestic violence protection and services for people who've experienced domestic violence. I know Attorney General Marone has been pretty successful in fighting back some claims the federal government were making on the Victims of Crime Act and the Violence Against Women Act. I guess the question that I've asked the other candidates is, what do you think Rhode Island does well in terms of safeguarding victims of domestic violence, and what do you think that we can improve, and what would you propose doing to enhance those protections?
Well, the first thing is that I think what we do well is this. Number one, we have a strong suite of laws to protect against domestic violence and to treat it seriously. Because, back in the day, there was a huge problem with officers not, basically not arresting, not investigating, and just saying if it happens in the home, it's between a man and woman, it is what it is, we're not going to get involved. So Rhode Island, this is long before me, long before you, but Rhode Island squared away our laws so that police officers are forced to investigate. If there's probable cause, they must arrest. So first things first is always keep an eye on our laws for developing, to keep after, to make sure that when there are new abusive patterns happening, we get after it. For instance, I hate this term, but it's what we use. It's called revenge porn, right? Because people
It's
keep
the worst term ever.
it's the worst term ever, but people keep nudes or intimate photos on their phones, and then they get the dispute with the partner sends it out as a power play, right? We've made that illegal, and we buttress that law with my bill to add in like AI deepfakes. You can't do that anymore because of the bill that I wrote, sponsored, and passed. I think that when it comes to federal funding for victim services, Rhode Island needs to build a guardrail around that. That federal funding may dry up because they may place so many crazy conditions on there coming out of the Trump administration. You can't use this money on people who identify as trans. You can't, they might put restrictions based on gender identification, all of that, sexuality, all of that, which would be just nuts, right? Because domestic violence doesn't distinguish whether or not you're a man, a woman, or identify as something else, whatever your biology is. That's just crazy. So Rhode Island can guard against that by setting up our own funds and allocating money for victim services. Last year, I know that there was a bill to put in about $40 million of our own funds to hold off whatever might happen on the federal side. I supported that. I still support that idea. And I think that all right, so laws, staying after the laws, money, staying after the money, and also making sure that we, from stem to stern, have the services in place to support victims of domestic violence from the first night that the police show up, all the way through the resolution of the case, all the way through the counseling process, all the way through the Victims of Crime Indemnity Fund, if that's appropriate, and that's what the Treasurer was talking about. So it's a chain that we have to pay attention to every link.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Just to add on that, and thanks for coming, Counselor. Just to elaborate on that, could the Attorney General's office be stronger prosecuting those domestic violence cases when the victim retracts? Because the law says you can go without the victim. A lot of times it's been a long time. I was in law enforcement, it's been a long time. but it can be discouraging when the police do what they're supposed to do, either arresting one or both, and then when we get to court,
Right.
it's
Sure.
over.
It's an incredibly difficult problem, right? Because the Constitution's the Constitution, and the Constitution demands that if somebody is a criminal defendant and they go to court, they can face their accuser, which demands that the victims of crime come forward, take the stand, and say, "That guy did this to me." That's very, very difficult for victims of domestic violence. I will say this, in my 20-some-odd years of being in the court system, and all I've really done is criminal law. A few sidesteps here and there, but I have deep expertise in this area. I can tell you that the attorneys who work in the Special Victims Unit and the Domestic Violence Unit of the AG's office are well versed in every single legal tool, legal lever that they can pull when that sort of situation happens. It's not perfect, but if there is a reluctant victim or a victim that doesn't want to take the stand, they know how to, they know the legal avenues that they can take to work to still obtain a conviction without having to put that person on the stand. Maybe there's another charge. Maybe there's a lesser charge. And those people need to be supported by the top dog in the corner office, the Attorney General. The Attorney General upstairs really needs to understand what's the right word I'm looking for? Really needs to understand the kind of the currents of these cases, the characteristics of these cases, so that that person can make the political decisions about where to put the resources and make sure that those people are supported. Because we need to stay on top of domestic violence and go after it wherever it is.
Thank you.
As I'm sure you already know that Rhode Island has one of the highest numbers of individuals on probation. How would you balance public safety and criminal justice reform?
That's a really good question. And I mean, we could talk all night, and I won't. Well, I would say this. Having done both sides of the job, I can appreciate the challenges on both sides. I have sat with victims who have suffered enormously at the bad acts of another, who've had family members killed, family members of murder victims. I've sat with them. I've sat with the accused, and I've sat with the wrongly accused. And you see how only the defense lawyer, in many respects, sees every part of the system, because they often go with the person from beginning through the process up to the end. So criminal justice reform is near and dear to my heart. And I think the question when it comes to criminal justice reform is this: how do we structure a system that does what is sufficient but not more than necessary to ensure public safety, to punish the wrongdoer but still provide an avenue for rehabilitation? Those long stretches of probation that we used to hand out like they were candy, the courts really don't do that anymore because they got the memo on mass incarceration. So it's much more, these days, what we're doing is much more balanced in terms of incarceration versus probation. We try not to keep people on probation more than, say, 3 years or so, but you want to put in place what's needed so that you can really enhance, you make them accountable for the crime, but also provide some opportunities for rehabilitation. When it comes to criminal justice reform, specifically, what I think that the AG can do going forward is this. Almost everybody who goes into the prison is going to turn around and come out. I think there's an opportunity to improve our reentry systems so that the number of people who get on the revolving door and come back in is reduced, right? So when somebody is in the prison, if we can get them, if they're coming out, if we can be thoughtful about how it is to provide the stability and the resources that they need to get back on their feet in a meaningful way, and usually it starts with housing, right? But it also, there's a few other things that go along with the housing is the big one. We can reduce that recidivism. So we don't need giant stretches of probation to ensure public safety. We just need to be more thoughtful about every step of the process in looking at criminal behavior. most of our attention always goes to the charge and to the punishment, right? How long is this person going to do in jail? But we almost never really pay attention in a meaningful way as to what happens to that person after that jail period, and oftentimes it's just victimizing someone else and going right back. I think we can pay some attention to here.
Thank you.
As the primary sponsor of the assault weapons ban, I understood there were two pieces to it, the sale and the ownership. And the House had passed in support of that, and the Senate didn't take a vote, but I also understood there was strong support. Why did you allow it to be diluted in a way that you can't purchase, but you can own?
That's a great question, and I'm going to try to answer as succinctly as I can because it's another one we could spend all day on. We, in conjunction with the Attorney General's office now, the House drafted a bill, and it was the bill that was introduced in both the House and the Senate that was a very comprehensive assault weapons ban. It did a few things, but the highlights are it banned sales and transfers. It banned possession of assault weapons, but it created a grandfather or a legacy clause so that existing weapons were still legal. And that's because of complicated Fifth Amendment takings issues. That bill was modified somewhat. That was my bill, right? Passed the House after a lot of work. The Senate looked at it and said, we don't like all this possession stuff for a bunch of reasons. We're going to create a ban on sales. And I was like, and I have to tell you, when this happened, I was like, we were so close, but I guess it's going to fall apart, right? Because I don't like that. But when I sat down and I looked at this, and this is obviously, I'm one member out of 75 in the House of Representatives, but this was my bill, and I had a lot to say about how we were going to handle what was coming back from the Senate. What the Senate did, even though it looked radically different on paper, did this. It created a ban on sales and possession. Check, that's what our bill did. It was silent on the issue of possession, but because of the way federal law works, you can't import the weapons into the state if the sales and transfer are illegal. So it's kind of like getting to the same place by two different roads. It created a group of weapons in Rhode Island, just like the House bill did, that would never get bigger and only get smaller over time. Not because it was illegal under state law to possess, but because it was illegal under federal law to import. So the bill was like 80–85% of the way there, in my opinion, even though they looked different on paper. And, you know, at the end of the day, politics being politics, it's a consensus operation. There's 38 senators, there's 75 members of the House. We were looking at basically 80% of the loaf or 85% of the loaves. And that's why I said, all right, let's pass it. Because I'd rather do something for gun safety. I would not like to have the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that is the story of the assault weapons ban in 2025. May change in the future, but I think it's a significant step towards gun safety here in Rhode Island this year. Mayor?
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. That's a good answer. So I've asked every other candidate about the ILO issue. The Attorney General did not find any criminal, I guess, wrongdoing, but he opined on the matter. Is that appropriate or inappropriate? You know that.
I think that the ILO issue, well, there's the investigation, the factual findings, and the opining. Three different things, all right? I think that the public has a right to know, right? There was an investigation done. I think it was a matter of public interest for sure, and the Attorney General was right and proper to say, here's the results of our investigation, this is what we found. On the opining part, that is, you know, that was Peter Nerona's prerogative. I think that, you know, I don't like to do hypotheticals, but I definitely come from the school that prosecutors try to do things without passion or prejudice, to really just follow the facts and call balls and strikes, right? So while I'm in favor of the report being public because there was a lot of interest around it, the opining was, I would have leave that to someone else. Well, listen, I appreciate your time, for sure. I appreciate you coming out. We have some flyers in the back, it tells you a little more about me. I am so thankful that there are Democrats who come out who are willing to stand up and push back against the craziness coming out of Washington. And together, I know we're gonna take back the House and beat these guys, and really show the American people that we are the better choice these days. And so thank you for your time. I'd love to have your vote. I'm gonna hang around the back if anyone has any questions. Thank you.